Kia ora. Welcome to Cinema in Context, discussing all things film and the connections in between. My name is Jeremy Downing, and what you're about to hear is a conversation that I had with two of my good friends, all cinema lovers, discussing the films Mahana, which came out this year in 2016, and Once Were Warriors, which came out back in 1994, both directed by New Zealand director Lee Tamahori. We discussed many things, touched on many topics, so here we go. I hope you enjoy. I'm here with Sarah Watt and Max Tarrant. My name's Jeremy Downing. We are three teachers teaching in Auckland, but also cinema lovers as well. I've got a film degree, got it at Victoria University many years ago, and have been an avid film critiquer since.
I'm Sarah Watt, English teacher and Sunday Star Times film reviewer for the last 5 going on 6 years, so that's a real privilege.
Hi guys, I'm Max Tarrant. I'll just correct Jeremy there, that's from my Facebook name, which I have sneakily changed so that nobody knows exactly who I am. And my film credentials are probably slightly less impressive, but have been interested in film for many years and did start studying it and then quickly shift, but have moved on to do political studies and things which have informed my interest in in film.
Cool. And we've all met through Teach First NZ. I think it's worth mentioning that. And we're teachers teaching English, all three of us, and film is a massive part of that curriculum. And I spoke to Sarah Max and said it would be great to sit down and record some of the conversations we've had, because I've had some really good conversations with both of you. And I think it's also an opportunity for me anyway to talk about film at a level that's not my high school level. It's great having chats about film with students, but it's nice to also have a little bit of a higher level discussion. So
Sure.
that's kind of what this is. And we talked about this, the format of this podcast being a recent film, a current film that's on at the cinema, and then a retrospective film, so a film that's come out, let's say, in the last 10, 15, 20, 100 years.
By the same director, connected by the same director, is that it?
Yeah, or
Or connected by some way.
Yeah, it could be the same studio, like if
Right.
it's someone like Pixar, we could look at
Right.
that sort of comparison, or a key actor that's played the same sort of role. So yeah, but today it is a connection by director, and we're looking at the film Mahana, which is directed by Lee Tamahori, New Zealand director, New Zealand film, and that came out this year. And also looking at his big film Once Were Warriors, which came out in 1994. And we've got 3 kind of guiding topics that we're going to look at, but sort of see where things go. Eh?
Sure.
A bit of an experiment today. So I'll kick us off. I think probably the safest one, or the one that's a nice in, is the question: one technical or film technique moment that impressed us in the movie. And should we start with Once Were Warriors or Mahana? Should we start with Mahana and then look back?
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah?
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Cool. Who would like to start us off? A film technique or a film moment that interests you?
I only spotted one in particular, and I think we'd all agree, and listeners who have seen the film would agree, that the fairly spectacular. I mean, to be fair, Mahana is beautifully shot, but but it isn't particularly tricky or clever in any way until you get to the shot. And are we spoiler free on this?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it?
So we'll talk around.
I think
the
talk
shot.
around it.
But
Yeah.
there is a long, I guess, crane shot that happens sort of at a relatively climactic moment of the film. There's a big revelation coming, and the crane shot starts low, comes up around the house. While we kind of know, we get this sense of doom and gloom that it is about to reveal to us something unpleasant. And then the camera hangs out by the 2nd-story window and then heads inside, and boom, there's this massive plot revelation, isn't there? And it struck me, obviously, because of the interesting nature of that one shot, and the fact that aesthetically, suddenly the film had gone quite dark. The lighting was dark. It was, if I remember rightly, it was ever so slightly grainy. It definitely had that sense of
black
it's
and white
being,
or something, isn't it?
Right,
Or
I think
sepia,
it
at least,
was.
because it's a
flashback.
Yeah.
Right. And as I say, then there was this sort of horrible reveal, which is at the core of the drama within Mahana. Did you feel that when you saw it as well?
Definitely.
Absolutely. That's what I wrote down as well. And I actually would go. I sort of wanted to talk as much about that shot as I would about that house. And I think I can safely say that it's the grandmother's house. probably one of the key characters really in the whole film. And the way they created that house as a character in itself was very impressive. I don't want to talk too much about comparing it to the book because I kind of find those conversations really boring. They get boring fast. But I love the book, and that's not in the book. The house as a character is not a symbol. And I was really impressed. It was actually the biggest thing that impressed me about the film is how they had created this extra character.
That's nice to know. I'd started reading the book at university for one of my papers, and inevitably for me didn't get through the whole story. So that I hadn't picked up on. People who had loved the book had sort of said, didn't love the film as much, because inevitably I think books can't always capture everything. Films can't always capture everything in the adaptation. So that's lovely that for some reason there was a directorial choice made to, as you say, create a character out of an inanimate object as well, but a very important one. So nice.
I think the key thing, and maybe this will be the last thing I say about the book, because I don't want to get too caught up on that. The book is Witsi Himaira, who wrote the book, is a response to him finding out about how Mormonism had been introduced to his family and how it had been a very shocking moment for him and a moment of anger. And that this storyline is a metaphor for that. That wasn't present in the film at all. In fact, religion is just something on the side. And I can see why they didn't do that, because there's just so many threads. But I can definitely see how some people would be frustrated that core piece of the story didn't translate.
Sure.
Anyways.
What was your...
it's interesting because speaking about the house, there's a kind of moment earlier on in the story which I found probably most interesting and attractive for the technical side of it. Just the colours that came out of it is when the young boy Simeon goes on his 8-hour trek with his horse up from his own house to another family house, and we see the new house, the grandmother's house, for the first time in that shot. And I just thought the colours and this kind of, it almost had a kind of dreamy feel, this lovely darkness, and I just found that kind of little short piece one of my favourite parts of the film.
Oh, lovely.
It uses the landscapes. That was the other thing I wanted to bring up. The shots of the landscapes that get dotted throughout are some of the most powerful little images there. Really beautiful landscapes, and obviously it's a huge part of the story. Mahana is this kind of man that, I don't know, comes out of the land or something, and they show that in the first shot with when they do the title. The title Mahana sits right on the hill. You can see that it's been propped right there. So you can see that they're kind of making this connection of there's a lot going on with the land here, and I thought that was a really beautiful moment that it gets brought in.
Isn't that nice though, what you say? I didn't pick that up, Max, when I watched it. Nice what you say about your introduction to the house as being something beautiful and lovely, which of course you wouldn't have then known how the house was going to change in its character later on. So interesting that you would go, oh, isn't this nice? And then it sort of it pulls the rug out from under the audience's feet later then, doesn't it? For the house to suddenly represent the place in which this horrific thing happened. Interesting.
There's one other moment that I brought out in terms of film technique. I really love the car chase at the start. I think that was a great
that was cool
moment. And a lot of fun and quite terrifying and set the era. You knew exactly what era you were in. In this 1940s sort of rock and roll sort of time, and I loved that.
It set the energy really nicely as well. I remember that in the very, very opening shots, as you said, Max, about the title on the hill, we get we just see Mahana, don't we, from behind?
Yes.
And then do we see Nancy Brunning, the grandmother, come into it as well? I remember.
I think the grandmother, it actually starts on the grandmother's feet,
right,
and it moves up her. I can't remember if we see her face then, but then it cuts to the back of Mahana,
right,
and it kind of swerves around and sees just this kind of the side of his face.
And it's quite peaceful and beautiful, and you think, this is going to be lovely, and then boom, you're into this energetic car chase that is at once humorous and sets the scene for the rivalry and everything. And one thing I liked about the film a lot is that the pacing, I thought, was terrific. It kept it going, it dove whatever from plot point to plot point really nicely. And I thought all the characters, and I thought Simeon in particular, I think that's his... Did I think that was his first role, his first film role? I think he might have been plucked from obscurity in in a high school drama class or something. I hope I'm not wrong on that. We'll get emails if so. But
from all our fans, eh?
Yeah, that's right, for all the listeners.
All the people that are listening.
Going, no, she's so wrong. Really nicely put together.
And I totally agree with you. I thought he really carried the film. But Nancy Brunning, she's just brilliant as the grandmother, and I thought just the way that she carried some of those, the big scenes, the big reveal scenes where she has her speeches. She just did them with such grace, really. And I thought it just blew me away. I probably even cried at certain points.
I did. I had slight little kind of tears, and I was kind of a little bit surprised, to be honest, because I don't know, the film, for me, it felt quite clunky at the start, and I did just at some point I think I kind of decided to just let myself get into it, get stuck into it, and by the end I really enjoyed it, and I was fully involved,
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because plot wise, and of course you've got to blame Himara for this, it's not Tamahori's fault at all, but plot wise it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? There's a problem set up, there's a rivalry, we don't know why, we find out why, there's a reveal, blah. So yes, I think that one thing that impressed me about the film was that I really enjoyed it, despite the fact that it could be accused of a degree of sort of predictability.
Yeah.
Or ever so slightly, towards the end you've got the sheep shearing competition, and there's always that kind of thing in an Antipodean film, isn't there? There's always some kind of, there's got to be a race or a competition or something. And I didn't mind it, and I thought for me, that's quite a sign, that's quite a sign if I'm not going, for crying out loud. Then,
Something worth mentioning, I went and saw the film in a Q&A session up the road at Linmore, and Timera Morrison was there, and he was a great...
raconteur.
Just a presence. And he talked about how they really had to make this film on a budget, and that... Talk about the landscape. They filmed it, I think, just around Auckland rather than down in Gisborne or around the areas. I did see bits
of
They kind of just patched
just over by the northern motorway, just before the tunnel. There was a shot I was sure I could see, just kind of.
Yeah.
I thought they had filmed on the East Coast, though. Why?
Maybe parts of it they had, but he did talk about that. They had to sort of patch it together, and then the sharing competition. It's a lot smaller than I think perhaps they wanted it to be, but it still worked. I thought they still did a really good job.
It looks fantastic. I thought the sharing competition feels like there's a real vibe there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, should we talk about Once a Warriors? Same question. It came out almost 22 years before this film.
I'm probably the only one of us around the table who saw it when it came out. Hey. You young bucks, probably not so much.
I don't think.
Wait, so what date did it come out?
94.
94.
Yeah.
So
I saw it when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
On VHS or DVD. Yeah. And I remember sobbing. Just so. And I still, when I watched it recently, I cried as well. I know that we were talking about it earlier. But
when it came out. If I can speak as the old person round the table. When it came out, obviously, it was revolutionary in many, many ways. And I don't profess to know the New Zealand canon so well that I can say categorically it was the first time.
Yeah.
But it was the first major time, I think, that we had seen Māori represented on screen in a very urban, gritty way.
Yeah.
And obviously, everything that goes into Once Were Warriors, it is... it's remembered, obviously, for the brutality and the gruesome plot details, as well as being, to some degree, sort of an accurate depiction of the experience of some urban Māori.
Inaccurate or accurate?
Accurate, to some extent, accurate, for some. And I remember that it made a huge impact. But but I'm ashamed to say that so I don't know how old I would have been, but late teens, early 20s, all we were obsessed with was repeating that blimmin' cook me some eggs line.
People still do.
People
still do. That's the kind of thing, and they go, that's sort of what it is.
And that's what it was about. And
cook the man some
effing eggs or whatever it was. So and obviously there's so much more to it. And now we are enlightened, we three, and I think society is enlightened enough to obviously be able to watch it and to feel much more sort of compassionate and much more concerned about the very real issues that are in the film. But what was interesting to me, I rewatched it a year and a half ago and wept, and I didn't feel the film didn't feel dated at all, which I think is quite interesting for a film made in the 90s to rewatch it 2014 or whatever it was, and for it not to feel cliched or hackneyed or anything like that at all. Yeah, it's a hard watch, isn't it?
It's a really hard watch. I mean, I watched it last year again, and I watched it very specifically because I'm teaching in that area.
Yeah.
And I was, that time when I first was crying, it was because I was wrapped up with the story and the kind of horror of the story, and they were characters. But when I watched it again, they weren't characters. They were, they were some of my students.
And that's exactly how I felt. That's right. Yeah.
I thought, I know that kid.
Yeah.
I know that kid. I know that parent.
And it was devastating to watch it with that sort of... That's exactly right. And I suppose that's the point I allude to with my shame of having watched it from that distance 20 years ago and just gone, oh, how awful.
Yeah.
Oh, well. And now to think, oh, how awful, and this feels much more sort of real and present. So, yeah.
I wonder if we shift, and we can come back to the film technique question, but I feel like one of the things I want to talk about in regards to Once a Warriors is... that sure, it's that horrible family violence and the alcoholism and the rape and all these just awful things that happen, but there is a real clear distinction between that kind of the urbanized Māori that's lost their culture, but then there's that Rena Owens character, who I could talk more about her later on, reclaiming mana and looking back to the majesty of
the heritage.
Māori,
Yeah, sure.
And there's that very clear difference there, and there's something in the horror of that. There's something really aspirational, I find, particularly with her character. I mean, I guess most people have seen this film, right?
Yeah.
We talk about the end.
Yeah, sure.
Her leaving. It's just such a moment of, it's a happy ending, sort of.
Does she takes the kids, right?
She takes the kids.
Does she take the kids up to the marae and?
He had to go live with her family.
Yeah.
And there is a clear distinction between a positive identity as being Māori and a negative identity. We actually talked briefly before we started recording the fact that we're three Pākehā individuals talking about, I guess, Māori representations. There is an uncomfortability there, but I think it's better to talk about it than not talk about it.
That's a good point. And I think that in terms of the actual question, posing that we're looking at representations of Māori rather than... I think what I felt when I was watching Mahana, sorry to skip back to that, and we'll have to be careful, was that it didn't feel correct or right to be commenting on representations of Māori. It felt more as if we're talking about something that has been created that is Māori, but it's not just an image, it's not like... It didn't feel like Lee Tamahori was going out there specifically to go, okay, here's an image of what you can see of Māori, this is how we live or something, or guys, other Māori people, watch this and this is your history or something like that. It just felt like a creation that he had made and was happy with being himself, Māori, and creating it in a Māori way.
Mahana, you mean?
Sorry, Mahana.
Yeah,
this is Mahana.
Right. Yeah.
But, yeah, I think there was a much more consciousness with Once Were Warriors, I felt, of the fact that it was, being in that time, it was a much bigger deal to be making this statement and to be showing these kinds of things. So that kind of,
it really put a stake in the ground. Once Were Warriors, in that it both opened the world to a community that hadn't been seen on film before, but it simultaneously created a stereotype.
And that's the danger, isn't it? That is absolutely the danger. The films that I teach my older students who are doing film English, a lot of it is about stereotypes, and we have to have this discussion that says stereotypes come from somewhere, and they come from statistics or they come from reality. But the problem is then that when people push that stereotype out and go, therefore all Māori. And that's part of the discussion that we that we have. So you're so right. I have a discomfort about the fact that Once Were Warriors went worldwide, and did festivals and everything, and people were like, "Oh, how awful!"
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, and this is a very, very real problem. But as you say, it's also it's not a positive depiction of Māori. And I wasn't onto it enough back in the days to know how it was received by, say, the Māori community, who might have gone, couldn't you be telling a different story, thanks, you know? Or whether they were like, actually, this is a freaking big problem.
Yeah.
And I'm quite glad that somebody's now paying attention.
I did wonder about the kind of, speaking about the history and the landscape of film and the landscape of Māori politics leading up to that, whether it was kind of like, because I understand that there was a kind of bit of a Māori renaissance in the 60s and 70s when they started producing very political literature and making some of those political statements. And then I wonder if it was at that point in 1994 where they were starting to go, okay, we've talked about ourselves and we've been so kind of heave-ho and gung-ho and been fighting for ourselves, now we can make a look in at ourselves or something like that.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Oh, right.
It's a very, I feel like, again, this is a very bold thing to say as kind of a Pākehā looking at it from the outside.
But I know that, again, to talk about Witi Himaira, he had a real rejection from writing in the sort of 80s, I think around about that time, where he'd been writing these very kind of happy Māori stories, and then he sort of realised that he was glossing over some really real issues.
Right.
So I think there's probably some weight to what you're saying. But I do know the 90s was the grunge time, you know, the 90s in film was that sort of, it fit very nicely into that narrative.
Yeah.
And talking
all
about...
New Zealand, sorry, just to say, all New Zealand film that I watched in the 90s contemporaneously was grim.
quite grim, yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, Sam Neill's famous description of it as being the cinema of unease. And I'm not sure if he meant 90s film or prior, possibly a little bit earlier, but certainly in the 90s it was crash and rain and
piano.
And the piano, and leading into... That's right, and leading into In My Father's Den, which I realise is, I think, early 2000s. But yeah, definitely, it was dark stories, you know, and we tell dark stories really well.
Yeah.
I think, though, I mean, in terms of cinema landscape, in terms of stereotypes, and I mean, Once Were Warriors, you need that film to be able to have your whale riders, your
That's what I think.
your dark horse. You know, like they talk back to that film. I mean, ideally, we would have had more Māori cinema right from cinema being made in New Zealand, but I think, you know, it sure set up a stereotype, but I think it did.
Broke down some walls as well.
Broke down some walls. Māori characters on screen.
It's kind of a question of being pragmatic in some ways, maybe. I don't know, like that you have to make this film, and it's sad that is probably still the most kind of watched depiction of Māori culture around the world
in terms of cinema,
in foreign cinema. But you know, if you can use that and you can leap from that to do a lot of other things, then it's got to be a positive step.
I'll tell you something that was interesting about Mahana, which I think shows sort of how not progressive necessarily, but how attitudes and whatnot have progressed, is, do you remember that the Te Reo Māori was not subtitled? By and large, it's not subtitled in Mahana because it doesn't need to be, because it's inferred. No, it's implied, and we can infer what's happening, and we don't need to know literally if someone's going, "Oi, you, get off the table," or whatever it might be. And I thought that was really nicely done, because not only does it sort of imply that we trust the audience to be able to understand what's going on here, but I also think it I don't know, it treats Te Reo as rightly as being just another language in New Zealand, in our society, that we can feel closer, connected to, maybe, rather than like, oh, what was that? That was a bit foreign. Do you know what I mean? And I'd be interested to know whether they've had to subtitle it for overseas distribution. And I don't know. I mean, arguably it's not necessary, because the bits that we needed to know for the story would be treated differently. I don't know. But I thought that was nicely done.
It was.
I guess to go back to one of the early questions about techniques and Once Were Warriors, that opening shot is one I picked.
Of course.
You know, it opens on that beautiful picturesque New Zealand landscape.
The billboard.
The billboard.
Yeah.
And then it reveals it's a billboard,
Right.
and pulls out, and it's that next to the motorway. And I think that is a statement. That's still one of my favourite openings of any film. I think just as a breaking, here's a stereotype. You know, talking about stereotypes. Here's a stereotype of beautiful New Zealand landscapes, and then we pull away, and
here's a reality.
And Owen's pushing that. I think she's pushing a shopping trolley and smoking a cigarette.
Right.
It's fantastic.
It is fantastic, and you're right in there, and that's that nice kind of jolting, isn't it, for the viewer of
Could be still so effective these days, people that have an image of New Zealand.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
You could do it. Yeah, you could imagine watching that straight after Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Where are the elves? I also Rena Owen. I guess I mentioned her before, but I think she's a powerhouse.
Yes,
she's
amazing.
Beth Hickey, every time I watch that film, I'm just amazed at how she brings such a dignity or nuance. I was going to say. There's just such a she's so nuanced in what she's doing. Tamara Morrison's pretty blunt.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a blunt character. Jake the Muss, he sort of just has to be angry, and he does a good job. I'm not trying to diminish his role, but what she brings to the film always impresses me.
It's interesting you say that, though, ever so slightly dismissively about Temuera Morrison, because my sense of him as Jake Hickey is in the scenes where inevitably, because this is how domestic violence goes, he is soft and loving and vulnerable. I did find him credible, and actually I think this is what he did very well in Mahana as well. He plays this Jake the Muss character in Mahana, doesn't he?
Yeah, effectively.
And then there are moments where actually you see the real man in there who is vulnerable and who is sensitive, and then you can see that when that vulnerability is pushed too far, that's when the hackles rise and the brutality comes out. And so I did feel that nuance from him in both those films. I found very much watching Mahana that I felt Jake the Muss under the surface quite often, which I thought gave the grandfather quite an interesting heft, and it'd be interesting to know if you hadn't seen him in the Jake role, whether one would have felt that.
Well, I was sitting there and even before the film, I'd been sort of struggling with trying to decide whether or not I thought it was a good move casting him in that role or not.
In Mahana?
In Mahana, him bringing, because Jake the Muss is inevitably going to come.
Yes.
When you're playing that patriarch, when he's playing that character, you're going to connect it. So I'm not convinced either way. I'm not sure whether it was a good thing or a bad thing for the film.
Right.
I found him effective enough that I completely forgot about Jake the Muss.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
I mean, I'm sure it was under the surface.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure that heft, I completely agree with you that it had a heft under it that made it really...
A menace.
Yeah.
You knew what he was capable of.
But I wasn't thinking, Jake didn't pop into my mind. I managed to kind of just focus on him. Well, not saying,
No, I know what you're saying, But you were lauding Rena Owen.
Yes, which is a good point, because I think she got thoroughly ignored around the world in kind of awards ceremonies, didn't she?
Yeah.
And that's kind of, over time, that's been kind of recognised as a pretty big snob.
I think so. I think that she deserved some kind of accolades for acting, because and also just bigger roles. I haven't really seen her do much. She's done a bit of voice work. She does a lot of coaching, I know. I watched a documentary actually about the film, I can't remember when, probably a few years ago, and she talks about, maybe talking back to one of the comments you made earlier, she talks about how when they played that film to different communities, different festivals, different women would come up and just sob and just hug her. And there was a shared story there. They had been through
beautiful.
Similar.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of what kind of story are people who relate to that community or that whatever, family lifestyle, there was a sense of shared, for some, it's a shared story, particularly for hurt, beaten, abused women.
That's a really good point. So I wonder whether that mitigates the discomfort of the depiction of Māori by saying, actually, it's the depiction of domestic violence. And that knows no bounds in terms of...
thing.
Absolutely. And so actually thinking of Once Were Warriors as a festival circuit film, actually now I realise people in Iceland or wherever wouldn't be watching it and going, oh, is that what the indigenous people of New Zealand are like? They'll just go, far out, that's a heavy movie. Because if I think about it, if I see crime stories from foreign lands, I don't go, oh, look.
No, that's right. You'll be looking at Jake the Muss going, oh, I know a guy that's down the road probably.
Right.
And most people have got that kind of connection somewhere in their lives.
Right.
I guess that leads on to another point I had, which is linked to Rena Owen, is that she's a strong, a well formed female character that's at the centre of that film. And I think it's amazing when you think about, like, I think about films like this, and it's like, wow, that's really cool. And then you look at kind of films that have gone on, and you think, oh gosh, we're still not getting it right in terms of female depiction. But I think her as a character she's really rich. She's a rich character.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, because she personifies the woman who stays, and I say it with inverted commas for our listeners, but does stay in the relationship. And she absolutely, she gives she lends such understanding as to why women stay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Because there can be such judgment about, well, for crying out loud, why don't you just leave? And it isn't that straightforward. And you can see she really loves him. And she loves him for the right reasons. When they are loving to one another, you can completely see it.
Totally, yeah. So human.
So human.
And there's those moments where he brings home the seafood, and they all get around the table, the family all enjoy that. I love those moments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And of course that's what's so devastating, when those moments are undercut by the brutality that ensues. But they're crucial, aren't they? You can't have a villain who's just a dick the whole time.
Well, not these days, anyway.
No, that's right. So, you can almost feel compassion for... And I think maybe nowadays viewers might have more compassion for somebody like Jake Heke, because we know, I hope that we all know nowadays, that those types of people are like that for a reason. And that's certainly where my compassion comes out.
And do we see that in What Becomes of the Brokenhearted?
I kind of watched
I can't remember, but if the children grow up, and I feel like one of them kind of grows up and becomes abusive as well.
I don't know, I can't understand. All I know is that I tried watching that film and I was frustrated because the main character was a child, one of their children, and he wasn't in the first film.
So
and I think
different actor?
No, different character. I think they had another child in the book that becomes the main character of the second book. And I was sitting there going, I don't know who this person is. They're not. Maybe it's one of the young kids and they've grown up, but then I noticed they were still there. So.
I remember nothing much came... I didn't see What Becomes of the Brokenhearted. I remember not a lot came of it, which is a shame for a follow-up to something so massive. So maybe that was why. I don't know.
I don't know. I found the tone a little bit off.
Did Tamahori do it?
No. Ian Moon, I think.
Oh, right.
Or was it Jeff Murphy?
Oh, right.
Another kind of well-known New Zealand director.
All you were saying about Rena Owen, she, I'm pretty sure she was in the dream sequence in Deadlands.
Oh, really?
I think she was one of the spiritual sort of godmothery type.
Yeah, she's popped up in a few
figures.
things. She's in Reign of the Children as well. Have you seen Reign of the Children? It's
a while
Vincent
back.
Ward's sort of docu.
That's right.
Reenacting drama. She plays Puhi, the kind of woman that it's based on.
But more recently than that, we knew she was in those awful Star Wars movies, don't we? Episode 2 and 3.
She was the voice of one of the aliens, I'm pretty sure.
But she was also in some strange sci-fi thing I saw recently, so I will just very quickly... Oh, she was in The Last Witch Hunter. Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
That is a film you can walk away from. But yeah, so that was 2015, The Last Witch Hunter. So she had a peculiar role in that. It was all a bit funny, all a bit fantasy.
I really enjoyed the Deadlands. I know it's not really what we're talking about, but the Deadlands
it is important though to make that. I was thinking about those, the films that have come out since Once Were Warriors and before Mahana.
Yes.
Deadlands,
Whale
Dark
Rider,
Horse,
as you
Whale
say.
Rider's a big one. Boy,
yeah.
being a big one. I definitely feel like I don't think Lee Tamahori is looking at Māori as a unique brand or anything like that when he's doing these depictions. But definitely by the time we get to Mahana, it's more like comfortable, and he's just going, okay, we're doing a positive depiction. There's no worries about that. And he's just
feel like there's enough stories that you can kind of do what you like and not be. It's like
he's definitely not focusing now. Going, this is just Māori.
It's like much more. I guess when you're the first, when you're the first one, or Once Warriors. I don't know if it was the first one, but it's definitely the biggest one.
Yeah.
You become the voice of that. You sort of become the voice of Māori cinema, didn't you?
Yeah.
I guess is that what you're trying to say? Whereas now there's more films, and you can just do what you like without worrying.
I think those boundaries have been broken, and now there's Yeah, I think so. Now he can talk about it, and it doesn't have to be a big issue that we're depicting Māori here having a normal life or having issues with authority. It's not going. These issues with authority are purely Māori issues.
You're right. Mahana is a completely transferable film. Completely. Yeah. There is nothing. If I remember rightly, there is nothing in it that says, "Oh, well, that's a Māori problem." Not the rivalry between families, not the appropriation of women or anything like that. You're quite right.
And he doesn't talk about. He doesn't weigh at all on colonialism in this film, which is interesting. It completely avoids that, and it goes. It takes this as a family issue within Māoridom. Within these people, it's just their family is dealing with it, which in some ways I was kind of like, are you ignoring a big part of history? Are you saying that this violence doesn't come from historical causes, or are you trying to get on and do something because this is how you feel that this is how it works?
And it's still representative of some people's experience.
That's right, yeah.
1960s, was it 50s, 60s?
Nice, yeah, I mean, it's...
Mahana?
I was thinking 40s.
Well, it's West Side Story they talk about.
Oh, well, that would be 50s then, I think?
Yeah, it must be 50s.
Right.
Late 50s.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
They go to see 310 to Yuma.
Yeah.
Not the remake. The original.
That was interesting. That was very interesting. They get that if we're talking about Māori and Pākehā relations, the fact that he introduces like the Western cinema, the kids are going to go see this Western cinema, and Mahana says, are they allowed to have this joy in their lives? Like Western cinema was this almost this
debauched.
It seemed like they were talking about it as if it was this joy. Should they be allowed that in a very positive light? So it's really interesting for the politics of it. Just letting it be almost monolithic, not saying anything negative about it.
Speaking of Māori film, the most recent one coming out any minute now is Orphans and Kingdoms.
Oh, okay.
And Orphans and Kingdoms is a terrific New Zealand film about Māori issues, certainly Māori issues, and it's about 3 young Māori kids who jump on the ferry to Waiheke Island and break into a house that they assume is unoccupied with the intention of laying low for a while, just sort of living it up in this beautiful big house. And the owner of the house, Pākehā, rich owner of the house, comes home unexpectedly, and then trouble ensues. The initial discomfort is, oh, here we go again. 3 Māori kids nicking someone's handbag, chomping down food, stealing food from a service station, and that kind of thing. The beauty of the film is that it actually does go as far as to investigate the issues as to why they've wound up in the situation that they have. And I think it's really nicely handled.
Oh, great.
So on the one hand, it's like, oh, it's another one. If we're talking about the way Māori are perceived, represented on film, then it's like, okay, it's not exactly a good news story. It's a sad news story, but at very least the film is intelligently handled and has the compassion to sort of look into the whys and wherefores rather than just this is how it is.
Yeah.
And actually, I think if Once Were Warriors has any faults, then perhaps one of them is not looking at the wheres and whyfores. If I remember rightly, it pretty much just goes, this is a reality.
Yeah.
There's at least one family in South Auckland for whom this is the reality, and isn't this awful? Rather than any thought as to how Jake got to be how he did, or sort of, as you say, sort of long time institutional and socioeconomic issues and all that sort of thing.
I don't think that if they'd looked at that, I don't think it would have been received in the same way. Not because putting aside narrative issues, I don't have it introduced there, but more because I don't think New Zealand
was
white
ready
middle
to
class public would. I mean, they're still not ready. We're still not ready. I don't think so. That would have been interesting to see how it would have changed the film's reception. Actually, on that note, talking about the film's reception, I mean, we've talked a lot about how Once Were Warriors has kind of gone around the circuits, and I think along with Heavenly Creatures, The Piano, I mean, it really put New Zealand cinema on the map. I mean, it was within a year of each other those 3 films came out. All got. I mean, Piano and Heavenly Creatures both got nominated for Oscars, and Piano won a few, and so it was hugely successful. I mean, Mahana, I don't think it's gonna.
Oh, it's not.
It's
no.
not gonna have that. I mean, as a film, it was okay.
Yeah.
It was a nice film.
Yeah.
But it was.
It was satisfying and nicely handled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I thought in relation or putting it against the other New Zealand film that's out at the moment, which I haven't seen yet and I can't wait to see, is Hunt for the Wilder People.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've just been looking at that, particularly just within New Zealand and how much buzz it's getting. I think Taika Waititi, he's very good at marketing.
Yes.
Very good
I
at
agree.
doing social media and that kind of thing, and created this real buzz around the film. Whereas Mahana, I don't know whether it was just the story in the film, but you didn't really see that much about it.
No, and Mahana, I mean, there's nothing sexy about Mahana.
No.
Now, don't get me wrong, there's literally nothing sexy about Hunt for the Wilder People, except that it's enormously fun and entertaining and funny. And Taika has such a great reputation, really deserved reputation for producing funny and entertaining. That's exactly what Hunt for the Wilder People is, and that's why people have flocked to the cinema thus far, notwithstanding the very positive reviews. We've all been giving it 4.5 or 5 stars, because it's a bloomin' good time.
It's a romp.
It is an absolute romp, and it's witty and it's clever, and I don't know how he got to be so brilliant, but he nails it. I felt the same with What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
You know, both of which I enjoyed much more than Boy, even, you know, but the whole country loved Boy.
I
So
love Boy.
right. So there is this Waititi canon, isn't there, that's hugely successful. Whereas Mahana is it's kind of a straightforward drama. It's beautifully shot. It's well acted. It's got nice camera work. It's engaging. The music is lovely. Sometimes I just think the modern day audience either wants to see Batman fight Superman really hard out in a very loud, clanging environment, or they want to laugh.
Yeah.
Well, it's shifted, hasn't it? I mean, the type of dramas that we used to go to the cinema to watch. You know, you look back at the 70s and 80s, the sort of films that were winning Oscars. It's all TV now. It's that really interesting drama has all gone to TV, and now you're looking at these massive blockbusters that are it's like a TV series. You go and watch the next $300 million episode of Marvel. Yeah. And it's an interesting shift. And then you've got your independent cinema bubbling away there, and Wilder People fits into that. But it's I think that the type of films that perhaps were the straightforward dramas, they've gone.
There's not the appetite for it anymore. And you're right, people get their drama off television. And everybody says, don't they, the catchphrase at the moment is that television's doing film much better than film could.
Yeah.
Because they're shot beautifully, they have film actors in them, Matthew McConaughey and you know Steve Buscemi and whoever you've got.
Kevin Spacey, Robert Wright.
Right. So everybody, that lot who started in TV to get into movies have now crossed back over to television. So that is tough. Yeah.
It was a slightly weird one for Tamahori to do, I feel like, as a kind of breakthrough
Mahana?
back into the and it's just it's kind of not it doesn't feel like a hardcore indie dramatic film.
Well,
you know, like
no,
Mahana. So it's kind of just like it very much is what you're saying, just a kind of quite a breezy drama, really.
It's a book adaptation.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, it is, isn't it? And I mean, I always say that for a movie to do a book adaptation well, it really needs to re-engineer the whole structure. I'm not a fan of people going, that wasn't in the book, or I think that's fine. I think you need the best book to film adaptations have really shifted it and changed it.
True.
And I think
otherwise
Mahana was
very boring.
Well, Mahana was halfway there. I think it culled a lot of stuff that they could have added in and muddied the water. I feel there was a clarity about the film, and I find that book adaptations can sometimes just mess all over the show. But it wasn't as the message. There wasn't a hard hitting message.
No,
it was very much the twist, the family drama, and that was
to be fair, the message probably expired in the 1950s when the story happened, because wouldn't be anybody watching that film nowadays who's going to go, oh, that's a good point. Yeah, we should let people love the people they want to love, and that would make for a much happier family. Because everyone's like, yes.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day when expectations were different, that would have had a different.
I did feel like it just didn't make much sense coming out kind of today. Like it doesn't do anything particularly progressive.
No.
The message, like you say, is old school. The themes are strong, but the message is not.
So therefore, I think what's interesting is Tamahori he's only directed 13 films, and obviously, Once Were Warriors was the big breakout in '94, which is 22 years ago now, and so we've got here Mulholland Falls, one episode of The Sopranos.
I didn't know that.
And then, of course, there was
the worst James Bond film, in my opinion.
Right, so there was this early 2000s bout of Along Came a Spider. Do you remember when crime dramas with a twist? And the twist was always that a copper or someone who was ostensibly a goodie was the baddie.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. And then, as you say, Jeremy, Die Another Day. And then things you've never heard of.
Yeah, The Devil's Double. I never saw it, but I heard really good reviews.
It's really good, but nobody went. Nobody saw. So The Devil's Double actually is Saddam Hussein's son, Uday, I think his name is, and Uday's sort of double. Sort of not exactly a bodyguard, but the one who would be sent out as the decoy. And it's a fascinating film. Dominic Cooper from the History Boys plays both characters very, very well.
Wow.
So that's your more traditional sort of action drama / thriller to some extent. And it's allegedly based on truth. And of course, the minute that it's based on the house of Saddam Hussein, there's some resonance, isn't there? Audiences go, oh, well, I've heard of that guy.
Yeah.
And it's opulent and it's, despicable and all those things. But other than that, old Tamahori... He hasn't done a lot.
No, you're right.
So then came back with Mahana. And so what I think I'd read or heard is that he wanted to he wanted to come home and make a film back home, and therefore it would make sense to do a literary adaptation.
Witty,
yeah. So, yes, his next film is Emperor, that's meant to be coming out this year. Meant to be coming out this year. Action epic. A young girl seeking revenge on the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V for the death of her father. So we're back in sort of action. Yeah, Game of Thrones actually. And just looking very briefly at the cast, Adrian Brody is, and when did we last see Adrian Brody? I love him. Don't get me wrong, but so basically a whole lot of people who either are nobody or are slightly somebody. You've got Oliver Platt and Eddie Marsan. Another Skarsgård. You can't get too many of those, to be fair. So it's not exactly huge hitting. So, yeah.
Interesting career, eh?
Yeah.
There's not a huge consistency in his career.
You don't get the sense, to be fair, and I know this is uncharitable, but you don't get the sense that this is the career of somebody who's making very discreet choices as much as the career is choosing him, because it's quite eclectic, isn't it?
Is that common to lots of New Zealand directors that have gone over to Hollywood?
Well, Jane Campion's got a very strong alter.
Apart from Campion.
Well, I think Peter Jackson's carved out. He's done a lot of different films, but there is a thread of. I look at his movies and I can see the Jackson stamp, for better or for worse.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What about Jeff Murphy?
Do you know what's funny? I saw a documentary about Jeff Murphy when I was in film, doing my film degree, and I knew him as the second director of Lord of the Rings from the Lord of the Rings making of. He's done all these great films.
Yeah.
He's I don't really know what he's doing at the moment. Roger Donaldson.
Well,
Donaldson,
Roger, turns out, born in Australia. That's a bit of a choker, isn't it? Because I've always thought that he was one of us. But I mean, he
did Fastest Indian.
Right, he did, and the bank job, and
he's probably had a similar journey to Tamahori, but he's made far more
far
films.
more, and like The Recruit and 13 Days and Dante's Peak. So he's got
Dante's
a much
Peak,
more sort of
one.
species.
I thought someone had done Species. Yeah.
Right. So his is very much more the gosh, he
Cocktail.
did Cocktail. So that's funny.
Did he?
Yeah.
Wow.
So he went to Hollywood and got straight in there with Kevin Costner and Tom Cruise and people like that, and so I would say ostensibly much more successful, again doing the inverted commas with the fingers. Well, no, he is more successful and has carved out a Hollywood career, and a lot of it's sort of action-y kind of stuff.
I mean, Taika Waititi he's the new director, isn't he? I mean, he's
doing the latest Thor. Yeah.
Which is interesting. I read the justification for that is that it's quite a dark story. They wanted someone to bring a sense of humour, which I'm not really convinced how it works.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed the Thor films, so
particularly the first one I enjoyed a lot. I don't think he's going to do a bad job of it.
He'll have to fit into that factory.
That must be just wild shift though to jump into that kind of Hollywood directing.
Yeah.
To just go and I don't know.
And of
I mean,
course,
it happens all the time, right? They always take a lot of indie directors and they
Yeah.
go, oh, this guy,
Yeah.
grab him quick and we'll see what he can do.
yeah.
Take a little bit of a risk.
Like
and
with
then
Ryan-
a lot of the time they blow up.
Well, like with Ryan Johnson, who admittedly has been around a little while now, but Ryan Johnson, indie director, did Brick
Right.
and Looper.
Brothers Bloom, I haven't seen that. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah.
And he's doing the next Star Wars film. He did
Right.
some fabulous episodes of Breaking Bad. So he's a sensational, brilliant young director. I still think I think he's young-ish. It's a poison chalice, isn't it, to be given the...
That's right.
There's a
That's
whole
what I feel like.
discussion around that, because particularly the fact that it's young men getting them, which is they're more overrepresented in film directors anyway. But how I was reading someone who had gone through film school and had a similar career to the guy Trevorrow, Colin Trevorrow, is that his name? Who did Safety Not Guaranteed, and then he got plucked up, and he of course did Jurassic World.
That's right.
And the fact that he jumped from that to that film, which is what we're talking about. But this young woman, she had a film with more impressive reviews. I can't remember who it was. And yeah, it's just interesting how...
And hadn't been offered a blockbuster.
Hadn't been offered a blockbuster.
No.
How dare they? But it's an interesting discussion.
I wonder if that could says anything about where we could go next with the podcasts and what we could be watching next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the shots in Once a Warriors that really sticks with me is the scene where Rena Owen opens the door and finds her daughter hanging from the tree, just to go there. And it's just, there's like a crash zoom, if I remember correctly, and there's just the horror of her kind of cradling her daughter who's dead, and there's the noise of the traffic, and it's just...
It's absolutely horrifying.
It's horrifying, and the way they dealt with it was just so simple. And just with a simple, like this really, really intrusive zoom, and then just the noise of the
and arguably her acting, and I hate to say it, but if I have any sort of this is a terrible way of putting it, I was going to say a porn addiction. I don't mean a porn addiction, but for some reason I'm quite drawn to watching films where mothers fall to their knees in devastation at the loss of a child. And most recently I've rewatched Naomi Watts in 21 Grams. And she, I was rewatching the film second or third time and this film isn't as good as I remembered. And then you get to the shot where she's in the hospital and the doctor comes along and you don't even hear what the doctor says, I don't think, or maybe you do. But it's all about Naomi Watts' response. And my goodness, if that isn't the mark of a good actress.
Yeah.
And she's sensational. And Rena Owen, I mean, that's where your heart goes, isn't it? It's so visceral and so in a way it isn't even the technical necessarily because it's actually you're completely there with the character.
It's the affective kind of. I really like that invasive zoom. I find that it's so interesting. I think at that time, that period of 1990s, David Lynch is doing kind of similar things with his cinema where it's so it's clear that you're watching a film, and this is right at the crux of the film.
That's a good point.
But you get this really invasive zoom because you have to know that you're still in a film. By this stage, people were watching with so much self-consciousness that you need to have that little silver lining. You know that you're still watching a film, but it's you're there now.
That's so interesting. So do you think that it's a directorial choice to sort of give the audience the opportunity to go, this is heavy, but thank goodness this is fake?
I don't know if it's absolutely conscious.
Right, but it has that effect, you reckon?
I think Lynch has done it consciously before, but I think it's something that starts to happen. People doing this kind of little, almost cliche feeling thing, and it just does give it it doesn't make it any less affecting.
Powerful.
This is the most powerful it can be at this stage because people are already conscious of the fact that it's a film.
Right.
And so you need to have that lining that helps you I don't know, that's how it works best.
Right.
I'm not explaining that very
No,
well.
you are. I hadn't thought about it, but I think that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean, Tarantino uses it all the time to great effect, but you always know you're in a film in a Tarantino
You
film.
always do.
Yes, yeah.
And if you've forgotten, you've got the
Yeah.
characters reminding you
Yeah.
talking about movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. With that high realism, it's nice to have those flourishes of something a bit more artificial. It just Yeah, what a way to end this discussion. What a point. But it was pretty rightly so. I mean, it is one of the most effective parts of that movie. But yeah, thank you to both of you. I think it was a robust discussion. We touched on, I think, many different corners of the cinema landscape of New Zealand.
Hopefully we've inspired listeners to revisit Once Were Warriors and to race down and get the new release out of their beleaguered local video library. All the ones around me are... Yeah, that's right. All the ones around me are shutting down. Machine. But yeah, Mahana, it's got to be available somewhere for purchase.
And for all our discussion around how it's just an okay film, it's still a great watch.
Yeah.
It is,
and I think it's quite a good family film as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that me and you were both had tears in our eyes is pretty huge.
Yeah.
I haven't had a tear in my eye for quite a while.
It's your first term teaching as well.
Yeah. In fact, I wasn't thinking about the film when I was watching it. No.
Well, there you go. That was our conversation about Mahana and Once Were Warriors. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening to our podcast. It's a little bit of an experiment for us at the moment. We're just seeing how we're going with these conversations, seeing what areas we're gonna step into. So check out our next podcast, which will be coming up again in a couple of months' time. We're going to be looking at another 2 films and seeing what connections we can discuss in regards to cinema and context. Ka kite anō.